War is an intense armed conflict between states, governments, societies, or paramilitary groups such as mercenaries, insurgents, and militias. It is characterized by extreme violence, destruction, and mortality. During the history, many warfares were used, and wars usually breaks out because of diplomatic issues, land claims, and many events such as a war-to-throne succession. Some wars have big impacts on society, like World War I, which started after a simple assassination, which led to many modern-day diplomatic issues. World War II was also influenced by the first one and led to Cold War, after the Germans wanted to reclaim their lands and to have global influence. Some wars don't have big impact, like the Falklands War between Great Britain and Argentina. The longest war ever fought was between the Spaniards and Arabs, also known as Spanish Reconquista, which lasted 781 years. The Roman-Germanic was lasted for 708 years, and the Anglo-French was lasted 706 years, 5 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days. But did you know that the shortest war happened in the morning of August 27, 1896, and lasted only 36 minutes, at max 45. Zanzibar was a small island country in the Indian Ocean off the coast of Tanganyika. Today, it's a part of Tanzania. In 1499, the Portuguese sailors claimed the land as theirs, but were expelled in 1698 by the Sultanate of Oman, who wanted to build itself a colonial empire. Sultan Majid bin Said declared Zanzibar as independent from the Sultanate of Oman, which was recognized by Great Britain and split Sultanate from that of Oman. Bargash bin Said, the second Sultan and Khalid's father, had been forced by a British ultimatum to abolish slave trade in June 1873, thought it was discovered later that instructions from London would have prohibited aggressive actions being taken. The subsequent sultans established the capital and seat of government at Zanzibar town, where a palace complex was built at seafront. By 1896, it consisted of the palace itself and ceremonial palace, which it's said to be the first illuminated one in East Africa. The building didn't have defense. British had recognized Zanzibar's sovereignty and its sultanate in 1886, after a long period of friendly interaction, and generally maintained a good relationship with the country and its sultans. However, Germany was also interested in East Africa, and the two powers viewed control for trade rights and territory in area throughout the late 19th century. Sultan Khalif had granted rights to the land of Kenya to Britain and that of Tanganyika to Germany, a process resulting in the ban of slavery. Many upper-class Arabs used the valuable trades, and that led to many unrest. The German authorities refused to raise Zanzibar's flag in Tanganyika, which led to armed clashes between Germany and the local population. One such conflict was in Tanga, which led 20 casualties. Sultan Khalif sent Zanzibari troops led by Brigadier General Lloyd Matthews, who was a former lieutenant of the Royal Navy, to restore order in Tanganyika. The operation was largely successful, but anti-German sentiment still remained strong among the Zanzibaris. Further conflicts erupted at Bagamoyo, which led to 150 casualties among the local population, and at Ketwa the German officials and their servants were murdered. The Sultan granted extensive trade relationship with the British. In 1890, Khalif died and Ali bin Said rose to the throne, who banned domestic slave trade, declared Zanzibar as a British protectorate, and appointed Lloyd Matthews as First Minister to lead his cabinet. The British also guaranteed their appointment of future sultans. The reign of Ali saw the signing of the Heligoland-Zanzibar Treaty between Britain and Germany. This treaty officially demarcated the spheres of influence in East Africa and ceded Germany's rights in Zanzibar to Great Britain. This granted the British government more influence in Zanzibar. Sultan's Ali successor was Hamad bin Thawani, who became Sultan in 1893. Hamad maintained a close relationship with London, but there was dissent among his subjects over the increasing British control in Zanzibar, the British-led army, and the abolition of slave trade. In order to control this dissent, the British authorities gave the rights to Sultan to raise a Zanzibari palace bodyguard of 1,000 men, but these troops were soon involved in clashes with the British police. Complaints about the bodyguard's activities were also received by the European residents. Sultan Hamad suddenly dies in the morning of August 25, 1896, and his 29-year-old nephew, Khalid bin Bargash, who was suspected of his death, mobbed to the palace complex in Zanzibar town without any British approval, in contravention of the treaty agreed with Ali bin Said. The British government preferred an alternative candidate, Hamad bin Mohammed, who was pro-British. The consul and diplomatic agent to Zanzibar, Basil Cave, and the General Matthews warned him and made him think more about his actions and its consequences. This proved efficient when they warned him 3 years earlier after Ali's death. Khalid ignored Cave's warning and prepared 2,800 troops with muskets and rifles. The majority were civilians, and 700 Zanzibari Askari soldiers sided with Khalid. The Sultan's artillery contained machine guns, a Gatling gun, a 17th-century bronze cannon, and two 12-pounder field guns aimed at the British ships in the Baba. The 12-pounders were presented by none other than Wilhelm II, the German emperor. Matthews and Cave conscribed 900 Zanzibari Askaris who were pro-British under the lieutenant of Arthur Edward, who was seconded to Zanzibar army and held the rank of brigadier general. Her Majesty's gunboats were prepared, like Thrush, Raccoon, and Sparrow. Some concerns were made among the British diplomats as to the reability of Askaris, but they proved to be steady and professional troops, hardened by military drills and several expeditions in East Africa. The troops were armed with 2 Maxim guns and a 9-pounder cannon. The Sultan attempted to have the As-Consul, Richard Dorsey Mohun, recognise his accession, but the messenger was told, as his accession had not been verified by Her Majesty's government, it is impossible to reply. Cave continued to send messages to Khalid to request his leaving of the place, but he replied that his succession would be at 3 p.m, 30 minutes after Hamad's funeral. Cave could not open hostilities without government approval and telegraphed the following message to the Foreign Office in London. Are we authorised, in the event of all attempts at a peaceful solution proving useless, to fire on the palace from the men of war? At 10 a.m. on August 26, 1896, the Archer-class protected cruiser Raccoon was aligned together with Thrush and Sparrow. At 2 p.m, the cruise St. George steamed into the harbour with sailors and the Commander-in-Chief. The Foreign Office of London replied, "You are authorised to adopt whatever measure you may consider necessary, and it will be supported by the Majesty's government." Cave attempted further negotiations with Khalid, but with no effect, and Rawson sent an ultimatum to Khalid to leave the place by 9 a.m. in the morning. The As-Consul stated, "The silence which hung over Zanzibar was appalling. Usually, drums were beating and babies were crying, but that night, there was absolutely no sounds." At 8 in the morning, no signals were noticed from the Sultan, and the St. George cruiser prepared for attack. At exactly 9 a.m, Matthews ordered the ships to bomb, and at 9:02 am Raccoon, Thrush and Sparrow opened fire. Thrush first shot dismounted and 12-pounder, and 3,000 defenders and servants barricaded the palace with crates and rubber. There were many casualties from the explosions. Despite the initial reporting stated that Khalid was exiled to India, he may have escaped from the palace, or he may have remained in the palace that caught fire when the ceasefire was reported at 9:40 am, when the Sultan's artillery was totally silenced. During the bombardment, a naval battle occurred at 9:05 when the Zanzibari Glasgow fired at the British ships, but it was sunk by a returning fire. After this war, 500 Zanzibaris were killed and 1 British sailor injured. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more.